Tyler is a writer based in Calgary. In 2017, he was a finalist for the Writers Trust RBC Bronwyn Wallace Award for Emerging Writers. His poems have been previously collected in Drifting Like a Metaphor, Calgary Poets Promise, and have been featured individually elsewhere. And I think June took the book back. Think of How Old We Could Get from Frontenac House last year is his first book, so please welcome Tyler Engström.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for being here. Thanks for the invite. Thank you to Shelf Life for hosting. I'm not really good at the whole preamble in between poem things. I'm just going to read a bunch of poems in a row, rapid fire. And as well, last time I said I was going to read a bunch of grocery store poems, and I ran out after 4. So I figured there'll be no theme to this one. We'll just go and see how it happens. So the first one's called Cigarettes in Idaho or Wherever USA. A bait and tackle shop in northern Idaho sells loaded guns by the pair. I asked the man at the counter why, and he says, why not? He says, this is America, is it not? And I say, it is, isn't it? I buy a bit of bait and tackle and a pack of American spirits and qualify for 2 free loaded guns as part of the promotion they're running. This is how the question of is this America or is it not settles to concrete in my mouth. Heading to Lake whatever, Idaho, or wherever I am, I tie some line on a pole and bait it and send it on non-existent currents. I am suddenly unsure what a fish is, what it even looks like. I know the word trout at least, and wonder if there's trout here. It would be good if there were trout here. Time passes, suns move, birds sing and stop singing. The trees do nothing as intended. I'm tired of trout fishing in America. Brodigan, are you there? I'm just tired. I take up a gun in my hand and fire once into the lake. The birds sing or stop singing, and the trees finally respond, and I feel as though I've humbled the sun. A man pulls up in a 1983 Chevy Silverado and asks me just what the hell I'm doing. I'm trout fishing in America, I say, and fire again. I say, go ahead, try it. It feels good to feel something. So he picks up the other gun, and there we both are, shooting guns into the lake. He says, this is America, isn't it? I say, it is, isn't it? Next one's called A Red Brick. I have a habit of collecting orphans. No, not what you're thinking, just objects that seem lonely. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. I was walking down the street. My wife finds it grating the way I start a story, and I stumbled on a red brick. It was just sitting there, can you believe it? A strange place for a brick, I said, but nobody was around to hear me. I picked up the brick and tossed it back and forth in my hands. It was a good brick, good weight to it, and that classic brick red. I thought maybe it had been in the movies, that's how good this brick was. But Hollywood was a long way from here. The brick and I walked down the street together and said hello to nobody at all. People started to look at me strangely. Someone called out and asked what I was doing with the brick, if I was planning anything dangerous. I said, I'm more worried about what the brick is doing with me, some things we can't control. I walked over to the corner store to buy a pack of smokes, American Spirits in the blue. I didn't really smoke anymore, but today felt like all I had left. There was glass everywhere, which wasn't how this place was usually set up, and the cashier was nowhere to be seen. I held myself to a pack and picked the brick up off the ground and brushed the glass off. I don't even remember putting it down, to be honest, but it must have happened. This one's called On My Way Home from the Corner Store. Today was particularly like any other day. On my way home, I passed by a wedding in the park. The bride was crying and the groom looked like he'd been mauled by a bear. His face was a mess, a prize fighter who'd lost and was quickly on his way to train the next generation of prize fighters. Those who cannot do, teach, something like that. I kept walking and found a man at the edge of a bridge. What are you doing up there, I asked. I plan to jump and see what the world will make of it, he said. It was a footbridge, maybe 6 feet off the ground, but I suppose we all start somewhere and eventually end up in the same place. It was a beautiful day anyway. I passed by an old dog, surely held up only by the concrete beneath it, and threw it half of the sandwich I've been keeping in my pocket, to which it said, if you're the only person I meet today, it will have been enough. This felt nice, but a dying dog is a dying dog. I kept thinking on my way home to tell this story, how everything was as it seems. I don't feel like I've done anything justice. Even the flowers were plain in a way I couldn't describe. There's supposed to be some beauty to it all, isn't there? The way, aren't I supposed to put words to the greenness of every leaf and the way the grass waves you in every direction but home? The only God that poets have wanted to fuck a tree. Wasn't this all supposed to mean something? Next one's called On the Birthday of America. It's a small one. The love birds I had been keeping as a reminder, engaged in mutual assisted suicide. I didn't even know birds could do that, but I guess why not? At first, the fireworks blew in my windows and filled my mouth with glass, turning every word into a view with a neon sign outside of it. I cracked a Bud Light. It was 4th of July after all. Wallpaper peeled into the natural curls every girl prayed to God for, except the ones that had them. The next one's called I Love Everyone. I know just what I'll do when the end comes. Not that I'm planning on making it happen. But you know, should I have a premonition that my next walk to the corner store will involve an 18-wheeler and my body sprayed against the asphalt like wet confetti after the world's last great parade, I know just what I'll do. First, I will say, I love you. To you specifically, and yes, there is no confusion, I mean you. If you were thinking, who does you mean? It is you. I will also say I love you to everyone else, because I love everyone, even if I don't yet know it. Following this month's or maybe years-long effort, avoiding the corner store entirely as I spread love until my tongue is paper, I will give away all of my possessions. The food in my refrigerator, my empty refrigerator, the sweater someone bought me once, which I didn't have the taste to wear or the courage to toss, a baseball, and everything else. I'll give my set of ornamental plates to someone who might use them as regular plates. I'll give my regular plates to someone who will see my face in them and keep them on the shelf. After I've given everything away, I will start to see the beauty in nothing. I will realize that if nothing is beautiful, then everything must be, except for the things which are not. What those things are won't be up to me. I will decide to start living my life. I will buy a new refrigerator and think about how empty it seems and think about, oh, all this time, all I really wanted was a crisp apple and maybe a small glass of cold milk. I will head off to the corner store and see all the beauty along the way. In each pregnant belly, young mustache, dying dog, and every pair of eyes that grow wider as I cross the street and feel the beautiful asphalt on the palms of my feet. They must see the beauty in everything too, I will think. Isn't everything beautiful? All right, this one's called Mother Teresa. I met a man who then attempted to rob me. He asked for my money and if not, my jacket, but it was cold outside and I explained to him that I would likely die without it. He had no jacket. He said he was dying as it was, and it was. He said, I wish you were dead, and if you were, I would rob you. It would be so much easier. Are you crying? I invited him back to my apartment and told him to sit down, and I made him a full English breakfast. I used every ingredient in my fridge, even the tomatoes I was saving for a special occasion. He said, this reminds me of the breakfast my mother used to make, and locked his eyes with mine. We must have stared at each other for hours. I felt the sun moving from one side of the room to the other. He never touched his eggs. I told him that I was in fact his mother, and that every pain he'd experienced was just a sorry dream, and I offered him a useless tit for comfort. We both agreed then that if there was someone that had to die, it wouldn't be me. All right, this one's called The Wasp. I look out the kitchen window and wonder why the flowers won't grow. I've given them plenty of water. Was it too much water? I don't know, I've never known. What life does water make anyway? Anyway, a wasp comes up to the window and lands on what would be my nose, if not for the window. I lovingly watch his little hands scrape against each other. Adorable. You look like a fly, I tell him, like all the little flies that crowd every rotting meal. I tap gently on the window and say, little wasp, I love you. And the wasp zips off. I lose sight of him and miss him already. I hear a pop and see a wasp had flown straight back and exploded into the window. Now, lifeless little Rorschach test. If you love something, you're supposed to let it go. If it comes back, it's yours forever. What remained of the wasp is my responsibility now. I owed him that much. I step outside and pick the pieces off the grass. His head, thorax, other parts I'm sure I learned the names of in school, but some things are so easy to forget. Most things are like that, I guess. I wash everything that was once inside of the wasp off the window and place the wet tissue in his little body in the bin. Back to the earth where you came from, I say. He was a very good wasp, as wasps go. My neighbor walks over and asks what I'm doing. Well, I say, I'm tending to the garden, doing what Mother Nature never had the guts to do. No pun intended. Do you think the wasp would be offended by that? God, I hope not. He stares through me, and I can tell I've shared more than I care to. There are no shadows on the ground, and the air is damp. His eyes are so glassy, he looks like he'd been crying. What's this about a wasp, he asks. The one in the compost. Never mind about that anyway. He starts telling me about my flowers. They need water, he says. But what does he know about it? What does he know about the life water gives? What does he know about smashing your head through the glass pane of the world? All right, I got a couple on my phone that I'm gonna, do you have much time to that?
That's good, yeah. You can keep going.
Okay, cool. Right. So this one's called Hot Night, Hot Night. And these are newer, so they're on here. This came out last year. So I've got some, let's see how they go. This is my first time reading most of them in front of an audience, so let's see. I count 3 breaths and taste my spit. Welcome to Little Death, Arkansas. A man walks in with lips like rubies or hot dogs. I know him. There's a knife inside of me with no handle, and I'm begging him to reach inside of me just like the knife that is inside of me and cut his fingers. Forgive me, hot dog man. There are so many hard lives and soft endings, but that is not the point. The point is rubies and lips, and so many of them. This one's called I'm Thinking About History. I'm thinking about history. I'm thinking about stray dogs with half an ear. I'm thinking about melanoma. I'm thinking about hills created from all our beautiful buried garbage. The garbage hills, we'll call them. Oh, they already have a name and it's just hills. Never mind. I'm thinking about the color of paint 2 layers deep on a wall. The persons before me back beyond a family or 2 like the color of rose. I'm thinking about dry riverbeds. That's a bit sad and boring, never mind. I'm thinking potholes and other quaint cracks in the asphalt. I love your imperfections as I run over you again and again. In another story, you can run over me, but not this one. Though what I wouldn't give to be reduced to pavement. I'm thinking about Hugo Chavez. I'm thinking about the foggy stains on a glass that has only ever been used for cow's milk because it says milk on the side. So we only put milk in it. We do as requested. I'm thinking of ending this train of thought, or maybe I'm just thinking of locomotives in general. When I was 6, I saw a boy a little older than I was at the time play chicken with CP rail and become train tracks. How wonderful it is when we all become part of unstoppable progress. Close your eyes, sweet baby, grease the wheels, butter the tracks. All the parents gathered around sobbing, thinking of how wonderful it was. And I have one more. This one's a 5-part poem. It's much shorter than it sounds. It's called Breakfast Variations. 1. Someone once told me of a plate of potatoes and sausage that my writings were also Kafkaesque, and I said, thanks, you mean like they turn into a cockroach? No, they said, like they were written by a European man who died of tuberculosis, or perhaps someone who worked insurance for a short period of time. 2, are you happy, he asked me. Are you in love with me, he asked me. I'm not happy and I'm not in love with you, I told him. Maybe I could be one of those things, but never both, so I'm neither. Why don't you love me, he asked me. I don't love anyone, I told him. Why aren't you happy, he asked me. I'm unhappy because I don't love anything. No, that is untrue. I love this egg, I say. Let me hold up an egg. You love that egg, he asked me. I do, I love this egg, I tell him. I love everything about this egg. I love the perfect roundness of this egg or the perfect ovalness. I love the texture of this egg and how we paint the walls of the rooms we love most in it. I love the color of this egg. Why don't you love me? Why do you love this egg and not me when I'm not unlike an egg? It's true, you are not unlike an egg. And what is it? What is the difference between me and this egg? Inside the egg, there are infinite possibilities of life and potential, and if not, breakfast. 3, I wake up and put on my makeup, but I don't, not really. I'm in the process of becoming more adept at masking my own despair within a rhyme scheme. Everything is more beautiful when it goes together like it was born together like twins, even so much that truth becomes secondary and is secondary in its own beauty. In reality, I barely wake up. I remark that blueberry Cheerios come as advertised and taste unsurprisingly like Cheerios with a light beat of blueberry. Soft whisper, small touch, invisible enough to be violent and forgotten. Or it is just breakfast and even this is too much for today. I hear the dog across the street calling for me, specifically yelping my death song. It's either my time or the dog's, and each day I place a bet on one of the 2 of us. 4, is this sad to you? It is sad to me. I'm driving under a bridge, and as I do, I'm picturing a man standing on the edge ready to jump into traffic. This happens a lot, or more often than I'd like. The thinking. When it happens as it happens, which is how it happens, I always see the man exactly as I imagine him. He has my face, and not just as someone who might look like me, but mine exactly. It convinces me I am him, or the other way around. Otherwise, he looks nothing like me. When he jumps, his face hits my windshield, and I breathe a sigh of relief, a small touch, a soft whisper, as every part of him becomes someone I can convince myself is someone else. He is eggs to me. He is eggs. 5. For this reason, I've made a decision. I have decided to give up poetry, whose blasé I am over it. The birds have never sung to me, and I have never loved the moon. I am writing the last poem and calling it Kafka Now, or How I Learned to Love Tom Brady. I am a fly, but it was not always a fly. At some point, I was a maggot. I'm not even a fly. I'm a human person who feels like they were never a baby. I do not remember being born in the same way I remember American football. I remember always being in the same way I remember what Tom Brady had for breakfast before Super Bowl 53 and how it wasn't eggs. But remembering only that which has no life and meaning of its own is a good life anyway, and breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I am forgetting. I am forgetting, and it feels beautiful. Why don't you love me? He asks me. I don't love anyone, I tell him. Why aren't you happy? He asks me. That's it.
Next up, we've got Leah Horlick. Leah is the author of 3 books of poetry. Her long-awaited most recent collection, Moldovan Hotel, was released by Brick Books in 2021. Her debut, Riot Lung, was shortlisted for both a Relit Award and a Saskatchewan Book Award. Her second collection, For Your Own Good, was named a Stonewall Honor title by the American Library Association in 2016. That same year, she won the Dane Ogilvie Prize, Canada's only award for LGBT emerging writers. And Leah is the current writer in residence at the University of Calgary. So we're very excited to have her. Please welcome Leah Horlick.
Thank you so much, David, and thanks to Tyler for getting us started. It's so lovely to be here. Some of you know that this is where I had the book launch for Moldovan Hotel in the virtual space. So I was just talking to Joan about how lovely it is to actually get to be here physically. It's very special. Hi to everybody on Zoom. It's no less special that you are here online. We really appreciate you logging in for us. One of the other things that I love about Shelf Life is that when I first moved to Calgary, I went on this queer walking tour of the neighborhood put on by historian Kevin Allen. If you have a chance to go, I really recommend it because I learned so much about this part of the city. And one of the things I learned that I loved is that this space used to be a gay bar. And so I just thought to kind of invoke a little bit of that for us tonight and see who comes out of the cracks to visit us. I would read some of the gayer poems from Moldovan Hotel that I don't usually get a chance to share. So I'll just read 2 longer poems for you this evening. The first one about a play and the second one about a film. One of the ways that I made writing this book manageable was to hyperfixate on this piece of Yiddish theater called God of Vengeance. The book is about me being the first woman in my family to go back to Romania and Moldova since we were displaced in the Holocaust. So like I was saying to Wayman beforehand, like difficult writing process and finding another piece of art to really focus on in that time made it much more manageable for me. Also because this is just extremely cool. God of Vengeance was written in 1907 by a Polish man about a woman whose family owns a brothel in a tiny Jewish village in Moldova. And she falls in love with one of the sex workers downstairs, who is also a woman. And they make this plan to run away with each other. They have this incredible monologue in the rain outside with their hair wet, which is like a big Jewish taboo, where they are like, economic freedom, this is the only way for us to escape the village. We can do this together because we're in love. It doesn't matter how we earn our money. This is the only way for us to be financially independent from men. And you're like, this was written in 1907 in Russian? The other thing I love about it is that by the time it made it across the water, it was the first lesbian kiss on stage on Broadway. In 1927, the whole cast was arrested on an obscenity charge, but the play had done so well in Russia that all of the Russian theater critics in the 20s wrote in and were like, live a little, and they got everybody out of jail, which I think is just kind of a beautiful thing to speak to in this particular moment with the way things are in Eastern Europe. So with that context, I wanted to give the 2 characters in the play a happier ending. Their names are Manka and Rivkala, and it starts with an epigraph from them. Also, the title of the poem is called Couple Flying Over Village, after the painting by Chagall, which you might want to look afterwards because it's just beautiful. I thought it might be a nice image for these 2 as they make their escape. Well, the other thing that's useful to know is for whatever reason, they're on a smuggling mission. They're really, really keen to get the Torah scroll out of the brothel. I don't know why. Sometimes Yiddish theater just has these absurd things that are really lovely. So that's the scroll. Do you want to go away from here with me? We'll be together days and nights at a time. Your father won't be there, nor your mother. Nobody will scold you or beat you. We'll be all by ourselves for days at a time. We'll be so happy. What do you say, Rivkala? Act 3, God of Vengeance. There must have been so many women, all braiding everything soft while their husbands write from Kiev or write from Lvov or never call, never write. Scores of Shayna Shangles in waiting. It must have been very dark and very quiet at night, and with all the men in a field, the back room, or studying 10 hours a day, someone sneaks down into the brothel, the cellar, goes out into the rain in her nightgown. She's just taking a bath. She's just washing her hair. There's no way everyone had a dowry. And the rabbis mostly agreed you could still marry a rabbi. Whither thou goest and all that. Your people will be my people, I swear, holding up a little lantern behind the shuttles, drifting over all the tiny houses, a red roof, a blue window, trying to see what we must have missed. It can't be all rainwater and Shabbat scenes, I know. It's called God of Vengeance. I don't care. Blessed art thou, historical flicker of self that mandates neither chickens nor husband, 12 children. Flicker of lamplight, real money, more than one dress, a voice that asks, do you like this? You'll be the bride. Through the trapdoor I insist on, Madam Mother pays everyone off, sends her daughter with the candlesticks, what's left of the scroll. A figure waits for her by the lamppost. I pretend they make it to Kiev, to Bucharest, Odessa. They look at the sea. Sell everything for the train ticket. Get on the boat. She's just my cousin. Whither thou goest. Boston, New York. We're surrounded by the other ending. Parents' house, inescapable. Winter, apocalyptic. Scant miles, insurmountable. Manka dissolves into a cascade of letters. A border rears its sudden head. The tail of the beast knocks over a village. Rivkala becomes a series of concentric red circles in the newspaper. If you are not careful, they will have you thinking we were incandescently alive until the clock reached 1940, like the shtetl was some little museum, tiny Jews clucking along beneath a glass case, invincible. I pretend that before the arrest, this first ever kiss on stage is a bottle cracked over the hull of the city. Shabbat is for kissing. I like to think of two very old women in a tenement, busy learning to play mahjong, easing their knees up the stairs. I dream of a headline that shouts, indecency, hung on the wall like a trophy next to the scroll. So just because we're such a nice small group tonight, and because it's lovely to be back at Shelf Life and kind of having my pseudo in-person launch finally with other folks who have launched their books here, which is so nice. I wanted to share a secret poem with you. This is one that didn't make it into Mold Open Hotel, but it's still quite special to me and is kind of related to the spirit of the night and invoking Ye Old Gavar from before. This is a guessing game. This is the poem about the film. And so afterwards, we're going to see which of you can guess which one it is. This is called, But How Does It End? It took us a couple of days. You had never actually seen the whole film. It's a commitment, a certain amount of time, popcorn, commentary. In the low light, I become my grandmother. Shah, now, this part is important. Of course you love it. It's perfect. Tevye is every migrant daughter's father until the third act, until a train pulls away. A broom, a hat, God knows when we will ever see each other again. You curl up in my lap. That can't be the end, but it is. What is the gentlest way to say, I mean, they probably all die. It's 1905, only one in a string of bad years, not even the beginning of the end. Ukraine overrun with winter, the railway thick with black hundreds. I mean, that's a one-way ticket to the gulag. The longer they live, the worse things get. Sure, New York is flickering in there somewhere, but it's not bloody likely. These people are poor. No, it's not the end. It's like that time on vacation. You and me perched on the edge of the fountain, a little buzzed. Someone made a joke and I said, I mean, he killed my family, and you burst into tears. Oh my God, I've never thought of it that way. You were like the first electric light. Yes or no. Ending, beginning. Little lie detector in human form. You can only feel what you feel when you feel it. That's it. That's the end. Did anyone guess the poem? You're so close, yeah. It's Fiddler on the Roof, exactly. Yeah. So if you ever have the opportunity to watch the whole film with someone who doesn't have cultural context on it, highly recommend. It really changes the experience as someone who's like, had it on in the background your whole life. And then you watch it with a new person and you're like, so that's all I have for you tonight. Thanks for welcoming me to the space.
We're going to take just a short break. There's some water and coffee and tea up at the side, and you can check out the books at the front. And for the folks online, just hang out with us. We'll be back soon. We won't be very long. Thanks. I think we'll get started again, everybody. While you're grabbing your seats, I just have a couple of housekeeping things. I want to say thanks to the Writers Guild of Alberta, Calgary Arts Development, the League of Canadian Poets, and the Canada Council for the Arts for supporting the Single Onion for many years. We really appreciate it. If you want to learn more about Single Onion, you can go to singleonion.com. We're on Twitter and we're on Facebook. We have an email list that you can sign up for to get updates about what we're doing each month. I want to give a big thanks to Shelf Life Books for being our host for so many years. And they have a special event coming up this Saturday. October 22nd is their 12th anniversary. So all proceeds from the sales from that day will be donated to cups. And you can enter to win 20% off for life from Shelf Life Books. So you better get out of my way while I do that. Because I'm going to win that. And our next reading will be November 17th, get back here at Shelf Life. And then, yes, on November 19th will be our anniversary party at the Inside Out Theater. So there'll be some things showing up online about that pretty soon. We're really excited about that. All right, let's get back to the poets. Our next reader is Samantha Jones. She's a scientist, poet, and editor based in Mohkinstsis, Calgary, on Treaty 7 territory. She's a magazine and journal enthusiast with writing in This, Room, Grain, CV2, Arctic, Geohumanities, and elsewhere. Her poetry has garnered international attention, including the poem Ocean Acidification, which was first published in Watch Your Head and later featured in the Virtual Ocean Pavilion at COP26. Sam is a PhD candidate in geography at the University of Calgary and has a background in geology. Her work also documents her experience living with OCD. Her OCD visual poetry chapbook, Site Orientation, is available from Blasted Tree. Sam is a white settler and Black Canadian and is the founder and facilitator of the Diverse Voices Roundtable for BIPOC writers at the Alexander Writers Center Society. So please welcome Samantha Jones.
Thank you so much. Now I'm stuck with this coffee, so just try not to spill it. Yeah, and thank you everyone for coming out. It's so nice to meet some folks that I've met virtually but haven't had a chance to meet in person yet, and then some friends coming to pump me up here. So I really appreciate it, and thank you for organizing and inviting me. And of course, I'm really honored to read next to all of the wonderful talent tonight. And so was thinking, what do I want to read? I don't have a full-length book. You can check out my chapbook online for free if you like at The Blasted Tree, and there may still be a few hard copies left there if you're interested. But I thought I'd bring sort of a selection of my work from some magazines, some stuff you might be not readily able to access, and then a few things that are unpublished as well. And I often think about my work in sort of three bins or three themes: the science world, which you've touched on already, thinking about the geosciences, earth sciences, how my research life comes into my creative life, how I can bring data into poems, how I can steal from the lexicon and use those images and things to explore other subjects where I might feel really comfortable in the science world, and then I can push my boundaries in a topic that's perhaps uncomfortable while using some metaphor that I'm stealing from somewhere else. And then I often write about family, lineage, culture, my own identity, and understanding my intersectionality, how I fit in. And then the third thing, as you mentioned, is health. So living with OCD, neurodivergence, sometimes the physical aspects of health, pain, accessibility. And so I have these sort of three bins, but when I take a step back, they're really all the same. So what I wanted to do tonight was share with you a little tour through those themes, and perhaps to convince you, or maybe to convince myself, that it's all the same thing. So we're going to do a loop all the way through, starting in science and then ending up back there at the end. The piece I'm going to start with is called Mount Pinatubo, and it was published this summer in Riddlefence. So you can check it out there if you like. And we're starting in the science area with some geology. Mount Pinatubo. A person, a single sunflower, their head turned toward the red halo, brushed around the late afternoon sun. Their body baptized in scattered light, this first awareness of connection between here and there, this side of the world and that side of the world. The whole globe, unified by one curved expanse. Its flora and fauna, them, us, fragments of the latter. Did the birds of Mount Pinatubo stop singing before the eruption? A plume of gases expelled from the crater, a mouth open all the way down to the churning belly, its payload launched into high altitudes, bleeding into the stratosphere, assembling a barricade of aerosols circulating, a common pooling that wraps around and around. We live on a thin veneer. We live on a thin veneer. This side of the world and that side of the world. We stand in a field of heavy blossoms. The birds, are they singing now? And so that piece was inspired by a childhood memory. When I was in elementary school, in grade 1 or 2, I remember us all going outside and we looked up at the sun. The sky was red, the sun was red, and the ash from Mount Pinatubo had, fully circulated the globe, and it was impacting the east coast of Canada. So you could see that there, and that was this moment of realization that we're connected to this faraway place, and that the earth is really one big thing all together. So staying in the science theme, but letting a few other things start to creep in, I'm going to read Estuary as my next piece, and this is published in Room magazine in fall 2021. Estuary. This body, a continuum, head on land, toes dipped in the ocean, heart somewhere in the middle, where water flows both ways. I feel the spring tide rising, churning up the shelf, clouding. I slip into alignment, a fleeting syzygy, a belonging. Me, this place, for just a moment, before it all gets sucked back out to sea, and the small stranded piece flip across the mud, silver dancing in the sun, exposed. My smile is dressed in sand dollars, bleached white under the sun, a mouth full of urchins made impotent by scavengers, the roll around of waves, spineless, I won't become them. I drop a memory into each oxbow, thoughts tucked into crescent lakes. They'll fill with silt and peat and be forgotten until my river switches course, my channel swings side to side. The rush will scrape my cut banks, eat me up, and spit me out downstream. So that piece, has a lot of geology, a lot of terminology that I've stolen from my knowledge in that area, but it's really about me thinking about myself. Can you be two things at once? Can I be both parts of my family at once? Can I be two races at once? What does that look like? What does that mean for me? How do I relate to the world? So in that sense, I've taken what I know really well about earth science, built this container, and then I can play inside of it and think about some of those tougher things. But now we're in family. So we're gonna do a family-centric poem. This is called 1861 Census, and it was published in the Manola Review in issue 30. 1861 Census. Canada West, Frontenac, City of Kingston, District Number 6, Cart Rideau Ward. 7 souls listed, my ancestors enumerated, with tallies and ticks, a 1-story brick house, a horse in the yard. Given names penned in almost illegible cursive, claiming the whole column and most of the left margin. People that couldn't be crammed into this colonial template. And the clearest section, a list of 7 uppercase M's, or delicate overstrokes written with even pressure, each a well-practiced single movement with crisp ink, black ink. M is for mother, with her husband and children. M is for member, each part of the household. M is for maker, to cook and sew dresses. M is for migration, a life north of the border. M is for many, the histories, the places. Virginia, the Caribbean, New York, Ontario, the unknown before that. M is for movement, it runs in the family. M is for black and white, one of the ways they used to say it, one of the ways they sometimes still do. And so that piece, we're sitting firmly in the family story that's actually from a census. That's one of my ancestors from several generations ago. And one of the things I find really interesting when I do family research is I want to know the women's stories, but often the women are tucked into the documents under the head of household, which is usually the men, unless they're widowed. And so when I'm digging around trying to learn about the women that came before me, it's often little bits and clues that are around other folks, and their stories are not the center. So, that makes me think about whose stories are center. What do we think as the predominant narrative? How do people experience the world differently? And then how is that documented? So now we're going to slide into still family, but moving into mental health. And I'm going to share an unpublished piece called Origin Story, which is about OCD, but also thinking about it in the context of my childhood and my family. And, I don't want to tell anyone else's story, but I'll say I'm not the only neurodivergent person kicking around the family. So there's some things passed down from family in this piece that are different than things like histories and items and all that sort of stuff. It's more like how we understand the world. Origin story. In the beginning, I was just a girl who liked the pristine crayons and order, Roy G. Biv, factory settings and stickers still on their white backing. Powers intensified. I graduated to perfectly planned notebooks, categorized knickknacks, and stored sentiments hidden from view but not yet ready for garbage day. I learned how to lock up and use dull knives to keep from pricking my fingers. My magic was intrinsic. It expanded to fill my growing shell, threading every cell with a string of worries too tight to slip up over my head and place in a music box. I put my own spin on family traditions, the art of list making, on takeout menus, flyers, sticky notes, envelopes, whatever I thought. So now we're in OCD territory, firmly entrenched. So we're going to do a full-on OCD poem. This one was published in a League of Canadian Poets chapbook anthology. The anthology was called You Are a Flower Growing Off the Side of a Cliff, and it was edited by Rayanne Haynes, who is also an Alberta writer. And the piece is called How to Leave Home 3 Times at Once. I belong to a special order. I belong to a complicated exit. that ebbs and flows back through the door and up the stairs to start again and leave the same way as before. Have you felt the way the brain can grip skin to metal, fingers flash frozen on the handle, that needed to be grabbed one more time, two more times, to triple check? I let go, my shriveled skin tugs and releases with a pop. I step down, 1, 2, 3, onto the walk, and back up again, and back down again, and back up again, hand outstretched, just to be sure. I'm going to read another very short OCD poem. This one alludes to self-harm. So if that's not something you want to listen to, folks online can headphones out, and I will explain a term right now so anyone has a chance to walk away if you need. So the poem is called Polynia, and a polynia is an area of open water in an otherwise frozen ocean. And oftentimes in that space, you have ice forming, maybe in like little pancakes or different rafts, but it's taken away and it doesn't stay there and form into solid sea ice. So that's just to give you an image of that. Polynia. I am an ice factory, building tiny rafts, sending them into the wind. I am stubborn open water, pulling away scabs, quickly replaced by newer, thinner ones. So again, we have crept back to science. We're talking about OCD, we're talking about mental health, the body, but also, again, where something that's maybe hard for me to talk about or hard to express or maybe hard to read about, I can go into, again, that science world and pull some images and some terminology that helps me ground myself and understand what I want to say and how to build a metaphor around it that makes sense and communicates the message. So now that we're back in science territory, I'm going to just read 2 short poems to finish. This one, called Spring Pulse, was the winner of a polar poetry contest in 2021, put on by Apex. And it's about seasonal carbon cycling and water cycling in the north. It's not technical, so you don't have to worry. It's all about the images. Spring Pulse. Ice-capped tundra lake, a freckle on the lowlands. Her liquid body saturated with 3 seasons of vivid dreams, thick with afterlife. An awakening, the first trickle, drip, drip. A warm stretch, her full lungs let go, emptying into the river. A sigh that sweeps all the way to the coast, ocean arms open, ready to receive it. A yearly cache dissolved, now dispersed. Summer waves whipped long fetch, churned up and wild, one last exhale toward the sky, before she tucks herself in and starts to grow a lump in her throat until it almost hurts. And the final thing I'll read for you is called Red Phalarope, which is a type of shorebird. And this is published in Arctic in issue 75, number 1. And perhaps Wayman might recognize this because I think you've heard this before. So, you get to see perhaps the final iteration of it since a few years ago. Okay, Red Phalarope. So you're going to come to the field with me and collect some data, and then I'll be finished the set. There is no one on the esker. Rocky ridge, a remnant of glaciation, undulating across the lowlands. Snow melts and drains, runnels off the crest and down the still frozen flanks. I cast my arm an instrument, scanning a swath and settling on a spot to measure. The river slips around me. I forage for data below the water's surface. She's half submerged, a rusty periscope sticking out of a water-filled pothole. I'll brag that I'm the first to spot one, even though she's not what I'm here for. It's after midnight, but the softened sun still shines light partly stolen by mist. I become a wader too. Less daring than her, I stop when the water is 1.5 inches below the top of my boot, some wiggle room. I tell you that I saw her bathing in a dent in the road, describe her location by twists and turns in relation to other things. You'll have to take my word for it. I didn't write it down. So thank you so much. And we're back at the start, back in science. So it's all one week. Have a great rest of your night.
We have one final poet this evening, Jaspreet Singh. His second collection of poems, How to Hold a Pebble, has recently been published by New West Press, and it's hot off the press. So please welcome Jaspreet Singh.
I'd like to thank the organizers of the event, Shelf Life Bookstore, David Martin, and very happy to read this evening with three wonderful poets. And thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being there. Is it still?
It's still going.
Okay. Right. So I'm going to read a few poems. I must learn again. I must learn again to be tactile the way I was with the seamel tree in the yard. The tree was a bristle of colors, an invitation. I touched, was touched in return. The tree absorbed that child the way it absorbs a portion of visible light. I must learn again how to hold a pebble, make contact with the simplest things. I want to unknow that a pebble carries the whole history of Earth. I want to feel it again as a simple thing. That one, that pebble, now in my hand. Lit the fire. Truth lies sandwiched between layers of rock, between lives lived, sparks created. Anthropo unseens. For some, the new epoch is all crime and little punishment. For others, little crime, all punishment. How can we erupt a feral dialogue in the dark times? Impenetrable darkness in an age of brightly lit cities, seawalled with reeds and enigmatic foam. Yes, a scene in our Anthropocenes. One must learn again how to hold a pebble. Learn again what lies between pebbles. The next one is called You, a Genius. Tomorrow, I will be the face of the morning. For 2 full hours, I will breathe toxic air of Switzerland. But Switzerland is so small, it doesn't contribute much. So why not cut the whole world into little Switzerlands? The next one is a ghazal. Everything is in order. Whatever you do, defy the sweet rhetoric of empire. bleed the big melon, liquefy the rhetoric of empire. Only the unexpected, the unknown will justify the future. Reinvent language, read Césaire, demystify the rhetoric of empire. Investigate traces, dwellings, oral histories, testify in a moving voice. Hesitation will only let the dead be used to buy the rhetoric of empire. Amritsar massacre marks a painful 100 today, and you 50. Learn from Bhagat Singh, disqualify. You speak the rhetoric of empire. Colonizing barbarians will quantify you yet again, co-opt, vilify your people. Cops in the head, emollients will super magnify the rhetoric of empire. Jaspreet, framed photos of Frantz Fanon will only beautify in time. Keep creating disorder. Live. Do not simply versify the rhetoric of empire. The next one is called February. It's an Edmonton poem, but it's also a Calgary poem. February. The world is a happy place, said the yellow cabbie. Some look for sadness and find sadness. The streets and avenues of Edmonton were white and minus 49. Like traffic lights, we switched to Punjabi, but he was less funny in mother tongue, even less wise. I did not mind, I was in Edmonton. The streets and avenues wide and minus 49, and I was soon going to boil an egg or buy a pound of greenhouse baby strawberries packed in a bag of unhappy plastic. This is for Samantha because of that scientific strand in the next one. It's called the Climate Laboratory. Today, there are no trains in Bremen. An email from the Institute alerted me. A team is defusing a World War II bomb near the city center. The bomb was found by construction workers doing routine digging. Yesterday, there was train traffic. Yesterday, I shadowed a glaciologist who gave me a tour of the ice core archive. I was allowed to touch an ice core, its traces of a volcanic eruption several thousand years ago. A few days earlier, during a similar shadowing, a deep sea postdoc allowed me to touch a sediment core, its traces of the end Cretaceous mass extinction 66 million years ago. Before I walked back to the train station, the postdoc also showed me a large collection of marine organisms, less than less than a millimeter in size. Fora mini fera, she said. They have such a small lifespan. Of all the fossils I have encountered, vertebrate or invertebrate, these tiny calcium carbonate shells stir me the most. Porous and dead, beautiful witnesses. The bomb was successfully defused, said the sprightly TV host in German. On Eisbahn, the Intercity Express, the coffee tasted better. Next one is called Akabo. Another language has joined Fora Mini Fera. Fossils in the calcitic ruins, echoes cannot say enough. A wayward poem inherits apocal unconsciousness. Of loss, no scale, remains no seawall. A child uses a phrasal verb, come back. And the last poem. Go, went, gone. Will old age olden all the kisses I was given? Or will they remain just the same? Because there are astonishments I still want to know. The sweat of hands, for instance, fugacity and longevity of pronouns. I want to locate what grows in gaps between couplings, why erosion beautifies things more so. Because I am still a body, a believer in the task of witnessing. Because I feel compelled to remind you at the door politely that it is kind of time for us to say goodbye. Thank you very much.
And thanks to all our readers this evening. That was really fantastic. Thanks everyone for coming out, and for the people joining us online, we really appreciate it. Thanks to Shelf Life for hosting us again. And we hope to see you next month for a regular reading on November 17th and November 19th for our special anniversary party. Yeah, thanks again, everybody. Have a great night.